Imagine producing over 180 films, shooting 120 magazine covers, and literally being named by CNBC as one of the most powerful economic forces in your entire industry.
Right, you build this massive, globally recognized personal brand.
Exactly. And then at the absolute peak of your fame and your earning potential, you just completely change your trajectory. You ask your millions of fans to stop using your stage name, and eventually you start a YouTube cooking channel right from your kitchen.
It's a scenario that completely defies how we are taught to think about career momentum, you know? I mean, when you hit the top, the rule book says you stay there, you capitalize on it. You definitely don't just liquidate the empire.
But that is exactly what happened. So today we are taking a deep dive into a stack of biographical articles, career retrospectives, and interviews covering the life of Ashley Brooks.
Yeah, and she was known professionally during her media career as Ashlynn Brooke.
Right. And the mission of this deep dive isn't just to read you a biography. We are exploring the anatomy of a drastic career pivot. Like, how does someone rise to the undisputed top of the mature entertainment industry, which is a highly scrutinized, widely controversial field, and then exercise the ultimate agency to just walk away and redefine her entire reality?
Which is incredibly relevant to anyone listening, regardless of what field you work in. I mean, we often trap ourselves in this sunk cost fallacy when it comes to our careers.
Oh, totally. We think we're locked in.
Exactly. We think that because we spent years building a specific professional identity, we have to stick with it forever. But this story is a masterclass in proving that identity is, well, it's a liquid asset.
A liquid asset. I like that.
Yeah, it can be entirely reallocated if you understand the mechanics of the industry you are in, and more importantly, if you know your own boundaries.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to truly understand the mechanics of how she exited this world, we have to look at the environment that forged her. And the contrast here is wild.
It really is.
We are looking at a highly conventional, deeply traditional upbringing. She was born in 1985 in a very small town called Choctaw, Oklahoma, and she was raised by her grandparents.
Choctaw is actually the oldest chartered town in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It is the absolute definition of a tight-knit traditional community.
Right.
It's a place where social expectations and conventional paths are very clearly mapped out for you from a young age.
And she followed that map perfectly, at least at first, right? I mean, she spent 9 years as a cheerleader, from the 3rd grade all the way through high school graduation in 2003.
Yep.
She was on 3 different squads, 2 of which were highly competitive. And then rather than running off to Los Angeles to try and be a star, she takes a completely standard job.
Yeah, she works at a used car dealership near Oklahoma City for over 3 years.
Right.
I want to pause on those 2 details, though, because they are the structural foundation for literally everything she achieves later.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about what competitive cheerleading actually instills in a person. It is not just waving pom-poms.
No, it's intense.
It requires intense physical stamina, an incredibly high threshold for pain and exhaustion, the ability to perform flawlessly under pressure, and this is key, a hyper-awareness of aesthetics and optics.
Right, you are essentially learning how to project a perfectly curated, energetic persona, regardless of how you actually feel in that moment.
Precisely. And then you combine that with 3 years selling used cars. I mean, what is a car dealership?
High pressure.
High pressure, male-dominated, commission-based. You have to learn how to read people instantly, how to negotiate, how to handle constant rejection, and how to close a deal.
Wow, yeah. So she was acquiring the exact skill set required to operate as an independent contractor in a ruthless media market long before she ever stepped foot on a set.
Exactly.
But that leap still feels massive to me. You know,
Right.
like the sources map out this gradual transition. She does some photo shoots for a local Oklahoma magazine, moves to Miami to pursue modeling, lands in publications like Gallery and Easy Riders.
Right, the motorcycle magazines.
Yeah. Works briefly as an exotic dancer, and then, in 2006, officially enters the mature entertainment industry. I still have a hard time mapping that jump.
It seems like a lot.
Going from a car lot in Oklahoma to the deep end of a highly controversial, mature media sector, it feels like she must have just gotten swept up in a chaotic current.
It looks like a chaotic leap from the outside. Definitely. But what's fascinating here is that the documentation points to something entirely different.
Okay.
This wasn't an accidental stumble. It wasn't a case of someone getting lost in Miami and falling into a controversial field out of desperation or chance. According to the sources, she harbored the desire to enter this specific industry from an early age.
Wait, really?
Yeah, she had been observing it. This was a highly calculated career move.
So she was actively targeting this space. because that fundamentally changes how I view this entire story. She wasn't drifting, she was steering.
She was absolutely steering. I mean, it requires a massive amount of internal ambition to look at an industry that carries such heavy societal stigma and decide, well, not only am I going to enter that space, but I'm going to dominate the market share.
Yeah.
She took the performative discipline from cheerleading and the aggressive sales tactics from the car dealership, and she applied them directly to building a media empire in a completely different demographic.
Which brings us to the actual business of building that empire. Because here's where it gets really interesting. I think a lot of people outside of the mature entertainment industry assume the work is somewhat unstructured.
Oh, for sure.
There's this misconception that it's just chaotic, party-like environments caught on film. But looking at her schedule, that assumption is entirely wrong.
It is a complete myth. When you break down the logistics of her output, it looks less like a party and more like a highly efficient manufacturing plant.
Let's look at the actual numbers. By 2007, which is just 1 year after she officially enters the space, she signs a multi-year deal to become an exclusively contracted female performer for the production companies New Sensations and Digital Sin.
Right.
The sources specifically note she was their first exclusive signing of that kind since a performer named Carmen Luvana. So she's immediately put into a very rare high-value tier.
And her output under this contract.
It's insane. We are talking 120 magazine covers, 30 massive photo sets, and between 90 and 180 feature-length films for mature audiences.
And we need to contextualize that timeline, too. To produce that staggering amount of content in a span of roughly 4 years requires a schedule that leaves zero room for anything outside of work.
Right. The sources say her work ethic was relentless. She worked every single day, weekends included, and she was sometimes shooting 2 to 3 separate scenes in a single day.
It's wild.
On top of that, she wasn't just performing, she was expanding her brand equity. She was hosting and even writing scripts for a Canadian network program called Venus Wars.
Yeah.
I have to stop and ask you about this because I'm trying to compare this to mainstream Hollywood production, and it sounds physically impossible. Wouldn't the quality just completely tank? How is shooting 3 scenes a day even a viable business strategy?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of media economics in the mid to late 2000s, it actually makes perfect sense.
Okay.
In mainstream television or film, a schedule like that would lead to immediate union intervention and severe burnout. Mainstream actors have trailers, extensive downtime for lighting changes, stand-ins, and strict SAG-AFTRA mandated rest periods.
Yeah, they might shoot like 3 pages of a script in a 12-hour day.
Exactly. So it's a slow, deliberate process. But the mature entertainment industry during this specific era, this is before the total dominance of free streaming platforms completely changed the revenue model, was entirely driven by the DVD and pay-per-view markets.
Right, physical sales.
And that market was a volume game. Production studios needed fresh inventory constantly to maintain their retail shelf space and their digital storefronts.
So it's almost like fast fashion. The speed to market is the primary asset.
That is a perfect analogy. Her exclusive contract wasn't about making one masterpiece a year. It was about monopolizing the shelf space.
Wow.
To shoot 2 to 3 scenes a day means managing intense physical endurance, continuous mental focus, constantly shifting hair and makeup, and performing, all while maintaining an upbeat, marketable persona that fans want to buy.
So she's leaning heavily on that cheerleading stamina.
100%. She wasn't just showing up to a set, she was operating as the CEO of her own supply chain, maximizing her contract to the absolute fullest extent.
It is a level of compartmentalization and drive that you rarely see anywhere. And that intense hustle was clearly paying off, setting her up for a massive pivot into mainstream culture. But before we get into how she leveraged that controversial success to break into traditional media, I want to take a quick second. If you're enjoying the vibe, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. It really helps us out.
So, by 2009, she has reached the absolute ceiling of the performance ladder in her specific field. And the logical next step for someone with her business acumen isn't to just keep churning out the exact same product until the audience gets bored.
Right.
It is to expand her skill set behind the camera, control the means of production, and leverage her built-in audience to cross over into mainstream pop culture.
Which she executes flawlessly, by the way. In 2009, she makes her directorial debut. She starts directing female-focused features for the mature market, but she also takes the helm on high-profile, big-budget parodies of mainstream properties.
Yeah, the parodies were huge then.
We're talking parodies of Little Red Riding Hood and Wonder Woman. And this strategy works brilliantly. Her mainstream crossover success kicks into high gear.
Oh, yeah.
In 2010, she appears in the major theatrical horror comedy film Piranha 3D. She even makes a cameo in the music video for the rock band Buckcherry song Too Drunk.
And the traditional financial world starts paying attention to her metrics, too. By 2011, CNBC recognized her as a legitimate economic force. They named her one of the 12 most popular stars in her entire field.
That's a huge validation.
It is. The financial analyst specifically pointed out how her mainstream appearances, like Piranha 3D, were driving immense search traffic and retail interest back to her earlier catalog and her new directing ventures.
She basically built a perfect self-sustaining economic feedback loop.
Mhm.
But I want to pause on the directing aspect for a second, specifically those female-focused features she was helming. Because when you reach that level of financial success, and CNBC is literally writing about your market share, I imagine there's an immense pressure to just produce whatever the data says will sell, regardless of how you personally feel about the material.
Right.
But what happens when you try to create content that doesn't align with your authentic self?
It creates a massive internal friction, and she was surprisingly candid about experiencing exactly that. The sources contain a very revealing piece of insight regarding her time behind the camera.
What does she say?
Well, Brooke stated that she identified as genuinely bisexual in her personal life. However, when she attempted to direct and produce exclusively female-only features for the mature market, she openly admitted that the final product just wasn't working.
Really?
Yeah, she said she felt she wasn't a, quote, real lesbian.
Wait, in an industry literally built from the ground up to manufacture illusion and fantasy, she felt like she wasn't being authentic enough. That is a fascinating contradiction.
It is a profound contradiction, and it reveals a remarkable level of artistic self-awareness. I mean, think about the environment. She is dominating a field entirely dedicated to performers projecting fantasies for a consumer.
Right.
Yet when she stepped behind the camera, she found a hard boundary she refused to cross. She realized that to be a truly effective director in that specific subgenre, she needed an authenticity, a specific emotional truth that she felt she lacked.
That's incredible.
It proved she wasn't just a machine churning out profitable content. She was an artist trying to find her genuine voice behind the lens, and she had the maturity to admit when a project felt hollow to her.
It's that exact level of self-awareness that I think sets the stage for the most shocking part of this entire deep dive. Because right here, right at the absolute peak, she has a mainstream theatrical attention, CNBC recognition, a flourishing directing career, a massive global brand. She makes a sudden, absolute, and definitive exit.
She walks away from the empire entirely.
In 2010, she retires. And it isn't a slow fade out. She posts a definitive announcement on her blog and her Twitter account. Yep. She tells her fans that her sites will no longer be updated with any mature content whatsoever. And in what I think is the most profound move of reclaiming her identity, she asks her global fan base to stop calling her by the stage name she spent years building and to refer to her simply as Ashley.
Which is an incredible display of agency.
So what does this all mean? I'm trying to find a good analogy for how sudden and complete this exit was. People always say it's like she vanished, but that's not quite right. Her career exit wasn't a retirement. It was a deliberate corporate dissolution.
Oh, I like that.
It's like a founder who doesn't just step down as CEO, but entirely liquidates the company's assets, burns the letterhead, and shutters the factory so the brand can never be traded or leveraged again.
That is the exact right way to frame it. Because she didn't just stop working. She dismantled the persona. According to the sources, the catalyst for this new chapter was her family. She had her first child, a daughter, in 2010. She later had a son in 2014 with her husband, Travis Rogers. But the timeline here is crucial to understand her mindset. She specifically noted that she was actually done with the industry before she even found out about her pregnancy.
Oh, wow. So she had already made the call.
Exactly. The desire to leave, the decision to dissolve the corporation was already made. The pregnancy was just the final, beautiful confirmation that she was moving in the right direction.
And there's this pivotal quote from her regarding the birth of her child that I think explains the entire psychological shift. She wrote, "Nothing on earth could have made me happier at that very moment. It was like God just reached down and literally removed me from that world and put me back into the real one."
That's powerful.
She said she knew from that point on her life would be, quote, peaceful, happy, and full of love again.
This raises an important question about the sunk cost fallacy we discussed earlier. Society assumes that if you achieve immense notoriety, especially in a heavily stigmatized or controversial field, the cost of leaving is just too high.
Yeah, like you're stuck.
We assume the brand becomes a permanent tattoo.
Hmm.
But her new reality proves that identity is fluid if you have the courage to enforce your own boundaries.
Because she didn't just fade away into obscurity. She actively built something entirely new and remarkably quiet. She transitioned from a high-volume media CEO to opening a small herbal business.
Right.
She launched a YouTube cooking channel playfully called Cooking Your Ash Off. And without the massive PR machine of her former life, she organically grew that channel to nearly 15,000 subscribers by late 2024.
And the contrast between those two lives is the ultimate takeaway here. You have the extreme juxtaposition between an intense, physically grueling, highly scrutinized 14-hour-a-day media career
Right.
and the quiet, deliberate, organic pacing of an herbalist and a cooking vlogger. It proves that career transitions do not have to be an upward climb on the same ladder. Sometimes true growth means climbing down, walking to an entirely different field, and planting a garden from scratch.
It really is the ultimate flex of control over your own life. To distill all of this down, we have looked at the journey of a young woman from Choctaw, Oklahoma, a high school cheerleader who learned the mechanics of sales on a used car lot, who
Yeah.
made a highly calculated leap to become a top-tier media star in one of the most demanding and controversial fields on the planet. She monopolized the market, she directed, she crossed over into the mainstream theatrical world. And then, at the absolute height of her power, she chose to become Ashlynn Brooke's herbalist, small business owner, and mother.
It is definitive proof that our careers, no matter how intense, no matter how public, and no matter how much revenue they generate, do not permanently trap us. You always have the right to liquidate the brand and start over.
And for you listening right now, whether you are feeling completely stuck in your current corporate role or you are contemplating a massive, terrifying life shift, the core lesson here is about agency. It is about the ability to work incredibly hard at something, to master the mechanics of an industry, and to maintain the equal, powerful ability to walk away the exact moment it no longer serves your peace.
Exactly. You are allowed to say, I conquered that, and now I choose a quiet life.
So to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, I want you to think about your own digital footprint and the momentum of your current career path. How much of your old self or your current professional identity are you holding on to simply because of the sunk cost fallacy?
It's a great question.
If you had the courage to completely dissolve your personal corporation tomorrow, to walk away from your current success and ask everyone to call you by a new name, what would your new real world actually look like? Think about the ladder you're currently climbing. Maybe it's time to step off.